Hello and welcome to another Win Daily Sports Show. My name is Michael Brazil. I have the amazing, the incredible Ashley Nicole here with me, and we are breaking down this nice little 3-game slate. We got a sweet matchup with the Lakers and the Bucks. Finals preview. I don't know. Some people are saying, but we also have the Knicks and the Warriors, which I think is where Ashley was going. Yeah, okay. She thinks that one's the finals preview. So we'll see exactly what happens there. But we are here. We are helping. I am Michael Raziel. This is the Win Daily Sports Show. If you haven't already, make sure to smash that like button. That is what we are here to do. People, you like us. We like you back. Get into the chat. No DFS tonight, guys. I do apologize. I don't have Ghost here with me, and he's my main man. But I think it's still fun. We're here to break down the NBA. This is an NBA channel, and we love talking about it. Ashley, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you? You excited for some basketball? I know yesterday is hard to top. Last night was crazy, but we're gonna try.
You know what? I kind of like these smaller slates, just 3 games. I get to focus a little bit more energy. I have 2 TVs, so I can't watch all 9 of those games that we had yesterday, or 8, whatever it ended up being. Tonight, I'll be able to sit down, watch LeBron and AD go up against Giannis, and I guess we can say Giannis and Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton's actually been pretty good this year, so the slander on him is interesting, but definitely excited to break these games down and chat with you a little bit. We'll get to the Knicks. I see the jersey in the background. We see the stickers. We know, but I also see the Kobe there too. So we could talk a little bit about the Lakers and the Bucks. Currently, the Bucks at home favored by 2 points. LeBron and AD. I don't think they have not been questionable all year. I think it seems that every single game they have a Q tag on them, so we don't know who's going to play or when. It seems like they always do. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a nationally televised game, so Adam Silver would be very disappointed if one of them does not play. So I guess let's start with, before we get into the game, how do you feel about both of these teams, right? We have the Lakers. We saw what they did last year, and we can get Daniel on here if you forgot. I'm sure you would love to hear him talk about it. But the Bucks especially, right? They traded away all of their depth pretty much and all their future picks to get Drew Holiday. Now he's looked good, but how do you see this Bucks team so far through the first quarter of the season?
I mean, they look solid. Right now, they're leading in offense in the NBA. They're number 2 right behind the Wizards, surprisingly, which, considering what the Wizards look like as a unit, you would think that wouldn't be the case. But all, credit to Bradley Beal. Right now, they're averaging, the Bucks are like 120 points a game. So, that's going to be interesting to see how they go against the Lakers tonight, who's the number 2 defensive team in the NBA, right after my New York Knicks. So it is going to be interesting. I think they've kind of figured out the formula, at least right now, how to overcome their shortcomings, which of course is the lack of depth when it comes to that bench. But the real testament to that is going to be as the season progresses. Right now, it's easy because the season just started. Right now, it's easy because also you do have a lot of postponements. So games aren't being played like they're supposed to be playing. You get extra rest days, things like that. They've really been, the NBA has been super cautious in making sure guys do not have to travel as excessively as they would say it were being a regular NBA season. So there are more back-to-back home games, which is a lot easier on your body. So right now it's too soon to tell if the Bucks really knew what they were doing when they traded away everybody for Drew Holiday and, other players like that. So I would say right now they figured it out. Right now they're going to keep rolling on that train, but I can't speak to the future. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm really curious how this team does look. I mean, Drew Holiday, I'll be honest, I don't watch too many Bucks games, but I watched that Brooklyn Nets Bucks game the other night. Drew Holiday looked pretty good. Like he looked like he was capable, but again, if you have Kevin Durant and James Harden on the floor at once, it makes it really difficult. You have to guard everybody, but you can't guard either of those guys as well as you'd like to. So it makes life a hell of a lot more difficult. And then let's switch to the Lakers for a second. I mean, they go out, win the championship, and they pretty much flip Danny Green somehow for Dennis Schroeder. They then sign away Montrezl Harrell from the Clippers. They also go out and get Marc Gasol, who is, he's not Novak. I'm thinking tennis. He's not Joker in terms of passing, but the dude knows how to pass the ball as a big man. He is fun to watch out there. How have you seen this Lakers team kind of come together with a lot of these? It's not just new pieces, but new, very important pieces.
For me, the real difference of how they've come together is more on the defensive end. I don't think offensively they got better than they were last season. I think depending on who you talk to, some people say they actually got worse. But defensively, especially with Trez joining the team and, like you said, leaving the Clippers, they've gotten a lot stronger defensively. And I'm a firm believer, and I know this is an old school mentality. I still believe defense wins championships, and defense is one of the only things that travels with you no matter where you go. Because when shots aren't falling, when your offense isn't clicking, and you saw that in the Nets game last night, the only thing you have to rely on is your defense, being able to lock down shots from happening on the other side of the court. So I think although the Lakers, like I said, depending on who you ask, may not have gotten better offensively, I think defensively they've gotten much tighter, which I think is going to help them in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, having Anthony Davis there, perennially could be considered one of the best defensive players in the NBA, and sometimes is. I mean, doesn't hurt. Really doesn't hurt. I mean, obviously LeBron is going to do his thing. He's pretty much just in cruise control until about the end of the year, the playoffs, as we've seen the last few years, and he's going to do his thing when he gets there. So he has that ability and authority to do that. So I guess moving on to the game tonight, Bucks are actually favored by 2 points. As you said, one of the better offenses going up against one of the better defenses. We just watched that Bucks Nets game the other night. How do you think this one's going to play out? And more importantly, again, this is a early season game. This game will literally mean nothing when we get to the playoffs. But
yeah,
what are some of the things that you're paying attention to? Because we saw a little bit last year, if I'm not mistaken, before everything shut down, there was that run the Bucks went on where they lost to the Lakers, they lost, I think, to the Clippers, and then they lost to someone else. And everyone was like, wait a second, what are we doing here? Then everything got shut down and we went to the bubble and kind of ruined that. So what are you just paying attention to outside of wins and losses? What are you paying attention to in this game?
I think one of the things I'm going to be really focused on is how Coach Bud goes ahead and uses his rotation against the Lakers. I'm curious to see what that rotation looks like. The Lakers have a great deal of size, and again, they're a defensive powerhouse. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bud goes ahead and utilizes Giannis, especially without having to tire him out, because Giannis is the superstar, and unlike the Lakers, where you have both Anthony Davis and LeBron James, I know the argument is, well, Jrue Holiday could be a superstar and Chris Middleton is an all-star. And listen, you have one superstar on that team, and his name is Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Coach Bud goes ahead and utilizes him without exhausting him, because you're going to need him in the fourth quarter. I don't think this is going to be a sweep or a wash, rather. I think this is going to be a game that's competitive. You have two teams that are strong on the opposite ends of the court, one offensive with the Bucks, one defense with the Lakers. So it's going to make it hard. I don't think the Bucks are going to be able to put up as many shots as they did against the Nets, because the Nets don't play defense. But I also think the Bucks are not going to make it as easy for the Lakers to be a defensive powerhouse. So I'm just looking to see how they adjust to each other. I'm definitely, all eyes are going to be on LeBron and Giannis, that matchup, if that is the matchup. I will be interested to see if Coach Vogel goes ahead and puts AD on Giannis to see if he does the switcheroo on him. It's going to be a lot of things to look out for. And I'm also keeping an eye on the bench. I want to see how that bench goes ahead, and when you rest your starters and you rest your stars, what they do and what they're able to put up in their absence.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good way of looking at it, right? Again, like, I want to watch this game because I think it's going to be fun. We have three of the best players in the NBA all playing on the same court in one night. I'm here for it. And what's really interesting is one of kind of the knocks against Coach Bud, and specifically with Giannis, is the last few years he hasn't had to play that many minutes. Right. And then when we get to the playoffs, he's still not playing that many minutes. Right. It's like, hey, it's crunch time. Let this dude play 40 minutes. He's 27 years old. He'll figure it out. Now, with no bench, this is one of those times where it's like, well, you can't really just play Giannis 33 minutes. Dude has to go out there and play 37 a night. So I think that's a really great point that you're bringing up, is because this is going to be, like, playoff environment. Obviously, the environment's not there, but the game is, as we said, potential NBA Finals matchup. We'll see what happens. But how do you look at that, I guess? Like, how are you, as you said, kind of paying attention to the bench and Coach Bud and what he does with, like, how are you looking, I guess, at Giannis specifically in this game, if he's up to task for something like that?
I'm definitely looking at that. I think that was one of my main concerns when the trade happened in the first place. Obviously, the trade came out of left field. Jrue Holiday and the Bucks, that was not even in the conversation. There were so many other teams that were at the top of the priority list to get him in the offseason. So when the Bucks came out of left field, it was really out of left field. It was like, whoa, what's going on here? And to see what that trade entailed, the main concern for me, and I tweeted about this, was the bench, because Giannis is going to burn out. And that's kind of how I feel, going back to the Nets game last night. I feel the same way about that big three in Brooklyn. You have guys, James Harden playing 50 minutes. You have Kevin Durant fresh off of a Achilles coming and playing 45 minutes. You have Kyrie Irving, who tends to be injury prone, also playing 45 minutes, and this early in the season. So I expect if, Giannis does go ahead and play big numbers tonight, which is expected, don't be surprised towards the middle of the season after the restart, which is going to be in March after the All-Star break per se. Don't be surprised if you start seeing him, take a couple days off for load management, because that is their guy. And, unfortunately, they don't have the depth to go ahead and have a deep rotation every single game. So a lot of it is going to fall on Giannis's shoulders. And, Coach Bud has to be really, really cautious and smart about the way he moves that rotation and the minutes that he puts on Giannis, especially this early in the season.
It's going to be fun, man. So who do you think wins? Who you got? Bucks, Lakers tonight?
It's hard to bet against LeBron James. It really is. I mean, as much as it pains me to say it, because, I haven't always been the biggest LeBron fan, it's hard to, bet against that team. And again, I'm a defensive girl. I believe in defense. So I'm going to go ahead and give the edge to the Lakers for this one. I don't think, like I said, it's going to be a big edge. I don't think it's going to be a big difference in the score. I think it's going to come down to the final minutes of that game, the final seconds, if you will. So I'm going to give it to the Lakers. I have them winning by maybe 4-6. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference in that scoreboard.
I love it. Take the Lakers tonight. Well, I'll be honest. I actually am on the Bucks. I'm on the Bucks. I do think they win. I mean, as you said, it's going to be a close game either way, and the spread indicates that. It's only 2 points. But at the same time, what the Nets were able to do against the Bucks, I think that's going to maybe wake them up a little bit. I think that's a really big slap in the face. Hey, this is the other team in the East. We can talk about the 76ers all we want, but we kind of know what's going to happen to them at the end of the year. They're going to shrivel up because of the 76ers. That's just kind of what happens. So I do think the Bucks pull this one out. I agree with you, though. I don't think it's by much if more than a 1 to 1.5 possession game. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but that KD dagger, that is just sitting in their minds and just sitting there and stewing. And I think they want to come out, show out, and remind people, hey, no. Giannis is pretty damn good. Let's not all forget what happened there for a second. So should be fun, though.
Yeah, it's going to be all eyes on that game for sure.
Yes. Yeah, that's the only game at 7 o'clock. So let's get with it. So let's move on to your New York Knicks on the road against the Warriors. Steph Curry came out, started doing his thing recently. Warriors are favored by 4.5 points at home. Knicks, man, Julius Randle. My goodness, those Lakers fans, they're crying their eyes out right now. I'm sure you're just enjoying their tears. We've seen RJ Barrett is looking like a man. That rookie that they got has been incredible too. I think there's like a thing on Nick's Twitter with his kid and his floaters. Am I correct there? I've seen something about that. Every time he shoots a floater, it goes in. So talk to me a little bit. We'll get to the Warriors in a second. You're a big Knicks girl. Talk to me. What are you liking about this team? And at what point do all these players just get so tired that they don't want to play for Tibbs anymore?
Hopefully never.
Hopefully never. I'll cross my fingers.
Can't have that. We're tired of having the revolving door of coaches in the New York, basketball environment. I can't have it anymore. MSG is tired of that revolving door. But look, the Knicks, we are in a rebuilding era. It's not something that Knicks fans are oblivious to. We know very much that this is not going to be a championship year for us. If we do even make it into the playoffs, it'll be a miracle if we get out of the first round. It's not something that we're even, thinking about. I know we went on our little run and everyone was talking play-in and playoffs and this and that. It's all in the fun of the game, but we know what the deal is. And we know that we're at least a season, 2 seasons away from being a real contender in the East. And we're okay with that. We're okay with finally building a culture that has stability, that has a foundation, that really can hopefully in a season, 2 seasons from now, like I said, be a competitor. So I think, the things that we're seeing are promising. I think what we're doing is we're instilling a culture of winning within New York. And that's something that has been absent for a very long time. I think also we're looking at, a coach who really has a way with dealing with these young guys, if you will. They listen to him. They respect him. They seem to have a good camaraderie, which is really important because that also is something we have been missing for a very long time. A lot of guys we're not fans of the coaching staff that existed in previous season. I go back and I think about Dan Antoni and Carmelo Anthony, how that did not work. That was a disaster. I think about Phil Jackson and Porzingis. That was a disaster. He was trying to get them to do yoga and sage the place, and Porzingis was not having it. So, I mean, there's a lot of, in previous experiences that has shown us that coaching matters. And I'm just happy to see that we're finally heading in that direction. So I like it. We're going ahead and we're playing, defense, number one defense in the NBA, which I'm excited about. Very excited about.
Take it.
Listen, offense, we're not top 5, but that's okay. Can't have everything. But yeah, I'm excited about what I'm seeing in New York. I really am.
Yeah, I think it's actually fun. Me being here in the New York area, I pay attention a little bit more. I'll be honest, I've watched more Brooklyn Nets games only because, hey, Kevin Durant's literally on my television every night pretty much. I'm going to watch as much of that guy as I possibly can. But no, the Knicks have been fun. It's definitely been interesting to see like how, you're totally right. And that was the thing about Tibbs, right? You knew you're going to get defense. That is what that guy has done every single stop of his career. It's just when Julius Randle is playing 42 minutes a night in a random game in February, like then you're kind of like, Tibbs, what are we doing here, man? And so obviously there are positives and negatives to what he's done. I completely agree with you. Instilling a real culture, a winning culture, and the dude has a track record. He's been to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like he knows what he's doing. So I think that part's really important. Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, though, I know you say they're not like a top 5. The Knicks aren't top 5 in the offense, but you kind of, Julius Randle, he's only there for like another year, unfortunately. But RJ Barrett looks like
we don't know that.
No, we'll see. But RJ Barrett looks pretty legit. I'm a big Duke fan. My friend Ghost. He's a Canadian, so we've had this thing a couple times here. And so, how have you seen his progression? Specifically from last year to this year, especially with that gigantic lapse of time between, the Knicks didn't go to the bubble, so they had all that extra time, so he was able to work out. And even with Julius Randle as well, because he looks like he kicked it into another gear.
Yeah, so to go to the RJ question first, I'm a big RJ. I'm the RJ, Capes Crusader. That is my guy. I'm a big fan of RJ Barrett. And, his first season in New York was tough. New York is a very hard place to play in, and the fans are unforgiving. They don't care if you are a rookie. They say it how it is. And it was hard for him. He came off the bench, midway through the season. He had an injury. He started early. It just wasn't, what we were looking for. And I think he's really starting to develop. He's starting to build in the area that he's strong in. So for RJ, right now, his area of expertise, his bread and butter, if you will, is just driving it to the rim, those floaters, those layups. He's not a long range shooter. He's not Steph Curry. He doesn't have much of a mid-range game right now. And I think sometimes the pressure is there for him to kind of think he has to take those shots to be beneficial to the team. But you got to do what you're good at. I don't have a problem with RJ developing those things, in his off time, during practices, shoot arounds, things like that, and just doing what he can do. And you see in the last 2 games that the Knicks won, when he sticks to his wheelhouse is when he is the most beneficial to the offense and the defense. When he doesn't try to do too much, but he does just the right amount, what he knows how to do, that is where he shines. And there's nothing wrong with doing what you know how to do before you know how to do something else. And then Julius Randle, Knicks fans were super tough on him last season. Wasn't the Julius Randle that we thought we were going to get. And now we're seeing, the Julius Randle that we had hoped to see last season. He's dynamic on all sides of the ball. And people want to talk about, we should trade him while his stock is high before the trade deadline. I'm so anti that, especially because right now, whether you like it or don't like it, he is the best player on this Knicks team. And he is the reason that we are in a lot of the games that we are in that are close and we lose, or the games that we win. And when he is on that court, the offense runs differently. It runs smoother. When he's on that court, what he does is infectious to the other guys on the team as well. They start playing better. You don't trade a player like that before. And then also, Obi Toppin's not there yet. This is his 3rd NBA game. He is not there yet. I'm a big fan of Julius Randle and what he's become this season.
Yes. Also, ain't no stopping Obi Toppin. Had to get that in there. No, I completely agree with you about trading Julius Randle. I think that's such like a fan perspective, right? It's like, his stock's high. Like, let's get a 1st-round pick for him, or let's get. Okay. Well, first off, who are you trading him to where that 1st-round pick's worth anything? We kind of know in the NBA, outside of the top 10, like not even all lottery picks are that valuable. Outside of the top 10, most years outside of the top 5, it's a crapshoot. So yeah, that sounds great, but wouldn't you rather try to win games? Like the Knicks have been so bad for the last however many years, and I apologize, I'm not trying to pile on here, but legitimately, like being in games is fun. Like you play to win the game. It's like a real easy cliche, but you're here to win. You're here to at least compete and have fun. Like me as a fan, as a Giants fan, like this year, yeah, the Giants kind of sucked. But towards the end of the year, we were in it. And it was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like I forgot what this was like. Like at least being slightly relevant is more fun than just being terrible. So I completely agree with you about the Julius Randle thing. And I actually want to say this. So again, big Duke fan, watch a lot of Duke games. This year they kind of suck, but 1 in a million, right? I think RJ Barrett's a better basketball player than Zion Williams. I watched a lot of Zion Williamson, and I think he is electric and amazing and incredible and all those words. But RJ Barrett is just better at basketball, like just as a basketball player. Now he doesn't have the side, the speed, the athleticism. We can write those off, but I mean, RJ Barrett was the #1 recruit. A lot of people forget that he was the #1 recruit of the class because he was the best basketball player. And I believe over time he will be able to develop that 3-point game, potentially be able to develop a little bit more as a passer. And I think he can be gigantic for the Knicks. I think they got an absolute steal in the draft, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, RJ is being groomed to be the face of the franchise along with Obi Toppin. That's why we drafted him. And I completely agree with you. I think he is a better athlete than Zion is. I think he's a better basketball player. Obviously, Zion has the size.
Yeah.
That's undeniable. He has the girth. He has the strength, things like that. But I think RJ has the finesse. I think he has the elusiveness. I think he has, the athletic ability to do things that Zion can't do. And I think sometimes people see, an athletic specimen like Zion, and they automatically equate that with being better at the sport of basketball. But there have been a lot of basketball players. The first that comes to mind is one of my all-time favorites, Allen Iverson, who weren't NBA built. They weren't what you thought an NBA player could or should look like. And yet they are some of the greatest basketball players to ever pick up the game, to ever play the game. So I don't think that it's fair to compare the two. They're two totally different types of players. I think RJ's ceiling, when it's all said and done, I think that he's going to be up there in the conversation of the best draft picks. And I think he's going to be one of the best New York Knicks. I really think that he has that in him. And I think that, comparing RJ and Zion, a lot of people say, well, he's not on Zion's level. Yeah, but he's a different type of ball player. You know what I mean? So it really depends on how you like your basketball players. Do you like them just big? And do you like them just, dynamic? Or do you like them to have some, elusiveness, some swag to it? I tend to like the latter. That's how I like my basketball players. I don't need the biggest guy. I just need the guy, with the best handles. I just need the guy with the, the cleanest shot, the cleanest movement. Some guys like the size. It really is just, a personal preference.
And again, we're splitting hairs. Both of these guys are amazing, right? For what they were able to do in college, again, and what they're able to do now. I think they're both awesome. And I think, again, you're completely right. It's how do you, they're two different. It's like comparing, like, hey, who do you think's better, Shaq or Kobe? It's like, well, that's kind of a different argument. That's an argument to have. And that's now maybe I'm putting myself in the hole and saying that's kind of where these guys are. Zion's this force of nature. He's gigantic. And yeah, he can, when you get him downhill, it's one thing. But you have RJ Barrett, who's more of a shooting guard, more of that small forward that can actually do a couple more things with the basketball. So please, everybody, I did not just compare RJ and Zion to Kobe and Shaq. Let's throw that out there now. But the Warriors, how are you liking the Warriors this year? Obviously, Klay Thompson going down, one of the best players in the NBA. Now it's 2 straight years of that. Now I'm starting to just get worried. Like, is this kind of the end of the Warriors? I don't know if this is going to happen. Draymond's finally getting back into his groove. Kelly Oubre. I'm actually interviewing Kelly Oubre Sr. on this channel in a couple weeks, so that'll be kind of cool. Very excited about that. Yeah. But Kelly Oubre Jr. hasn't been able to hit a 3 in what feels like forever. So hopefully he can kind of get out of that funk. It seems like it's a mental thing because he hasn't been this bad in his career. So I'm curious. But how do you feel about the Warriors? Steph Curry's doing his thing, man. Steph Curry's still doing his thing.
Yeah, listen, you can never count out Wardell Curry. That's for sure. Steph is just a monster. He's just unlike anything I've ever seen in a very long time. I mean, the way he is just able to play and bounce back and kind of just that shot just seems to fall anywhere he is on the court. It's just unbelievable. But I think the Warriors should look at the Nets, going back to those Brooklyn Nets, and to see how Kevin Durant has been able to come back and play after coming off of an injury that a lot of players are not the same after, especially in his age group. I mean, he's over 30. Yes, he's not old, but he's over 30 years old. And Klay Thompson is young still. He's still a young guy. So I think that if you look at what they've been able to do with KD, I think if I were the Warriors, I would be, somewhat optimistic about Klay Thompson and Klay Thompson returning and what he's going to look like when he does return, because now you see it's possible. Now you see that it's not a death sentence. Now you see that it isn't something that necessarily is going to change a player completely, depending on how they rehab, depending on how, they take care of it in the offseason while they are out. So if I were the Warriors, I would be not as worried. Obviously, you still have concerns. It is still a major injury, but I wouldn't be as worried. And if they can go ahead and keep Draymond, I think Wiseman is looking fantastic. And the way Draymond has really been able to take him under his wing. Every time you see them, the camera pans to them in a game, he's like yoking them up and like coaching them up and saying like, look, this is what you need to do. I'm going to go hard on you. That's what you want, with your rookie and your vet. You want that kind of leadership. You want that kind of dedication to making them better. So I think the Warriors, I know in the beginning when we first heard about Klay Thompson, it was like, well, that's it. The window's closed. They'll never win again. But I don't know. I don't know if looking at them and seeing how Steph's kind of putting this team on his back, seeing how Draymond has taken the leadership role, seeing how Wiseman's starting to, come together and really, go under Draymond's wing and listen to him. I don't know. I think that the Warriors may not be as finished as everyone thought that they were.
I'm hoping not. I hated the Warriors for those Kevin Durant years, but their brand of basketball is so much fun. So much fun to watch. The movement, the ball, like the passing, it's incredible. And one thing that I think we're not going to remember this until a little bit later in the year, maybe even the offseason. The Warriors own the Minnesota Timberwolves first round pick next year. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are probably the worst team in the league. And it's a little bit debatable, but definitely one of the worst teams in the league. Now I think it might be like top protected, like top 1 or 2 protected, but that is going to be an asset that I don't think they're going to, as they did with James Wiseman, knowing, hey, Klay Thompson's down. They were still probably going to pick him. They needed help, in many places. I don't know if there's a prospect. I think next year's draft class is better. We'll get into that later. But that I think is a pick that they can flip for somebody. And I think that's a pick that they can actually use and go and say, hey, this Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook thing's not really doing so much for you guys. Do you want to start over as a franchise? I don't know. This is an idea. So that'll be interesting. So tonight's game, Warriors favored by a couple points at home, 4.5, top 3 protect. Thank you very much, Mr. MJ Colorless. Appreciate it. How do you feel about this Warriors-Knicks game? Do you think the Knicks come out? Do you think Tibbs holds it down? He does his thing for the defense and they squeak out a win? Or do you think this is Steph Curry's night again?
I don't know. It's hard to bet against Steph, even when it does come to my New York Knicks. I know playing out west, the first game out west tends to be, especially for East Coast teams when they're traveling, it tends to be weird. There's something about that time difference that's just weird for guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if, the Knicks struggle. But the thing about New York that I'm liking, and this is something else that I think Tibbs has instilled in them, is that you can see that they go out on the court, unlike previous seasons. Every time they step on that court, they believe that they can win that game. You saw it when they beat the Bucks. Nobody had us beating those Bucks. Let's be honest. So I think this Knicks team, that mindset and that mentality, and also they continuously fight. I think even when things aren't going their way, they continuously fight. And you saw that in the game against the Orlando Magic. You saw that in the game against the Cavs that they won. And I think that's something that you definitely can never count out. I think RJ and, Randall have had a nice break from that last game on Martin Luther King Day. And it was a much needed one because they were kind of, beating a dead horse there. They were starting to get exhausted, especially coming off 2 back-to-back early morning, midday games. Yep. So I don't know, but Steph Curry's kind of playing out of his mind. I think if you can lock up Steph Curry somehow with that number 1 defense in the NBA, I think it would definitely make this a more even playing field. Because right now Steph is the only one kind of, keeping them in these things. But if you can't figure out a way to stop Steph, it's just not going to happen. That just is what it is. Yeah,
it's difficult. What the Warriors were able to do against the Lakers only a couple nights ago, coming down. I went to sleep. They were getting crushed. And I was like, well, whatever. That's fine. See ya. Not a big deal. I can go to sleep on this one. Wake up and they win that game. That's the Warriors, man. That is the Warriors. I'm for it. I think the Warriors take this one. 4.5 kind of seems like a small number to me, which is weird. I think the Warriors
Yeah.
kind of beat them by a bit. But you are right. The Knicks are coming off the pretty much 3.5 days rest at that point, right? 2.5 days, whatever it is, because they played that early game. They won on Martin Luther King Day, right? It was
They did.
ugly. It was ugly, but hey, wins a
It was
win. Defense, baby. Defense.
it was a gritty win. It was what I like to call a 90s style game. It was all grit, no
Yes.
glamour. But
90
listen,
styles games where they total like 160 points. You gotta love it.
it was all grit, no glamour. But you know what? A win is a win, and I like a gritty win every now and then. It shows me you have some heart.
Yeah, you got some toughness. That's always good to see too. So let's move on. We have one more game tonight. Doesn't quite have the star power or the sex appeal as, LA and New York and Steph Curry, but the New Orleans Pelicans, we were talking about Zion a little bit. We have the Utah Jazz, who are a pretty darn good team in their own right. The Jazz are at home favored by 7 points. So they think Vegas thinks they're going to win by a few, and it should be pretty fine. Talk to me a little bit. How are you liking this game? What are you seeing out of the Pelicans so far, especially with all those players that they got from the Bucks team, Eric Bledsoe and the like? How do you feel about the Pelicans so far this year?
I don't know how to feel about the Pelicans. That's one of those teams that the jury's still out. I think the Pelicans have the potential to be a lot more than what they show. I think they're very much a roller coaster. One game they're hot, the next game they look terrible. One game they're hot, the next game they look terrible. I think the Utah Jazz, this game is going to be interesting because, the Jazz are number 3, I believe, in defense in the NBA, and they also are number 2 in rebounds. But the Pelicans are number 5 in rebounds, and that's got to be a lot of credit to Zion Williamson himself. So I think this is going to be more of a defensive game. I don't expect there to be a lot of points. I think, and if there are a lot of points, it's going to be a very one-sided. Donovan Mitchell's going to have, go off. I think this is going to be a lot of a slower game. I think both teams are struggling, though, offensively. They don't look how they looked last season, especially the Jazz, because if you watch the Jazz in the bubble, I mean, they look like a completely different team than what you saw during the actual regular season. And that's why a lot of people say, oh, the bubble was an unfair, advantage to something. I think the bubble evened the playing field for a lot of guys, a lot of teams rather, and made teams that really weren't shining in the regular season shine in the bubble. So I haven't seen that magic recreated consistently yet from the Jazz. Again, the season still, just started. It's still super early. And that goes the same for the Pelicans as well, for them to figure it out. But I don't know. I think this is going to be a much slower game. I wouldn't be surprised if this game doesn't crack 90. I think it's going to be a super, super low scoring game.
Yeah, and Vegas agrees with you. 216 is the total, so that's not very high. That's pretty low, especially when we're seeing any Bucks game, or I'm sorry, any Brooklyn game essentially at this point is at about 240. So yeah, the points aren't quite coming. The Pelicans have looked weird this year. Zoe's been hurt, so he hasn't been around as much. He came back, I think, what was it, a couple nights ago. I don't know how he fits. I don't know Stan Van, what the hell he's doing. I don't really understand it feels like they just have a bunch of stuff that they got from all these trades. They got Steven Adams. It's like, oh, let's grab this guy and let's grab that guy. And they just kind of threw a bunch of stuff together. And it's like, here you go, figure it out. You have Zion, you should win. It's like, no, it's not quite how it works in the NBA. They look terrible in the bubble. And I agree with you. The Jazz, how incredible they looked without Bogdanovich there in the bubble again. Now he comes back and they're like, this team's going to be incredible. They're going to score 1 million points. Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and Bogdan. And it just hasn't, defensively, as you said, they're pretty damn good. But offensively, they just haven't clicked as well either. So it's been kind of weird. But I'm not going to watch this game. If anything, I'm going to watch that Knicks Warriors game. But it's on the slate, so we have to talk about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I guess, like we said, we spoke to it. The season's still early. But I think the Pelicans, and you just spoke on that as well, you alluded to it, is that it's like a cluster of a team. It's kind of like you put a bunch of players in a bag and you shook it up and then you just pick names out of the bag and whoever you picked was on your team. It just doesn't make sense. The players, the roster, how that roster could possibly work together, the rotations, none of it really makes much sense. And then on the Jazz front, the roster makes sense. On paper, if this was 2K, this should be a much better team offensively, and they just have not seemed to find the magic. And that's unfortunate because, two of those guys just signed really big extensions, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy. So you would hope that, this is going to work because, you got a lot invested in it for it to work. But it's just not clicking right now. I don't know if it's just the weird slump of, things kind of slowly coming back into things after being in the bubble. I don't know if it's just, everything's kind of weird right now. It's kind of like when the NFL started and, we had no training camp there, or a shortened training camp, an untraditional training camp. You saw a lot of sloppy football in the beginning, and teams were winning games that they shouldn't have been winning, and teams were losing games that they shouldn't have been losing. I think this could be somewhat of the same, conversation. You look at a lot of teams across the league that are not doing that great, that are struggling, that you wouldn't think should be struggling. A lot of teams are losing games they shouldn't be losing. It's just a very weird time in sports right now overall. It's just a very odd moment to be in.
Weird time in the world, I think. I think we can kind of let that all be encompassing. But I agree with you. I think with this being a slower paced game, I do think the Jazz pull this one out in terms of betting. I actually already took the Pelicans plus 7. That's a pretty big spread. I think they can at least cover that. I mean, Brandon Ingram's been pretty damn good this year. Not quite as good as kind of we're hoping, but he's been good. Zion's been doing his thing. I think one thing with the Pelicans that's going to help is get a little closer to the deadline. They're going to trade away some of these guys. They have to. There's no point in having all of them. They're not going to make the playoffs, it doesn't look like. They're kind of like middling. They might make that play-in game. Same thing, though. It's not like you're trading away Julius Randle, your best offensive player. You're trading away kind of like a rotational piece. Just get him out of there so that way you can just figure out what the hell you have. I think that'll be important. But I do think the Jazz pull this one out. I'm taking the Pelicans plus 7, though. How do you feel about this one, Ash?
I'm going to agree with you. I think the Jazz pull it out. I think the Jazz are offensively less of a disaster than the Pelicans, and I think that's going to work in their favor. I don't think the Pelicans, yes, they, top 5 in rebounds. They're not top 5 in overall defense. I don't think they're going to give them much of a problem when it comes to scoring. I think Donovan Mitchell, Rudy, the whole gang are going to have a lot of time, a lot of opportunities to take shots. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them. I don't think, the Pelicans are not going to be able to hang in there. I just think that they're not going to put up much of a fight when it counts and where it counts. So overall, I'm going to give it to the Jazz just because I feel like they have a better roster, they have better players, and they have the better scorers. But it's gonna be a slow game. It's gonna be like watching paint dry. It's not gonna be a fun time.
Yeah. Perfect. I'll be asleep for that one anyway. Or no, I'll have Knicks Warriors on. How's that sound? But this has been great. Ashley, thank you so much. Just to recap what we're thinking. You have LeBron. I actually have the Bucks for that fun game in the beginning. I'm going to give you the Knicks. You can just have them. I'll take the Warriors. Does that sound? And we're both on the Jazz, even though I'm actually going to sprinkle a little money on New Orleans plus 7. Really do appreciate your time. And I actually so just kind of a little bit aside, saw you on Joy Taylor's show the other day. What the hell, dude?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I know when we did our show, right? You both worked at the same station in Miami, correct? Something like that?
We worked, so Joy and I both at one point worked for the same channel. Yeah, but we worked separate times. So she was there before me. Okay. And she moved on to big, better things. And then I came in as a young, aspiring journalist, fresh out of college, and ended up working at the same place she did. And somehow we crossed paths, and now here we are.
I love it. And how was the show? Did you have a lot of fun? I haven't got to
It was great. It was great. She's always good to talk to. We're a lot of like in our reporting and in our thought processes, and she's a good friend, and it was a good time. So
hell yeah. And so where can everybody find you online in case they want to catch some clips of that?
So you guys can follow me at Nicole Moss on Instagram and on Twitter.
Nice and easy. You can follow me at Michael Brazil 1. You can follow us at Win Daily Sports. We appreciate it. Thank you to everybody in the chat. That's my favorite part, seeing what you guys and girls have to say. That's always fun. We had a fun little troll the other night, so we had the whole chat jump in on them. It was a blast. It was an absolute but thank you so much to Ashley, for everybody over there, for everyone over here at HNB Media TV, for everyone at Win Daily Sports. We hope you make it a very profitable night in the NBA. Thanks, everybody.